You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
That's what's kind of frustrating me right now, is the fact that every time I go out, I said this on the previous podcast I recorded in this quarantine, but my basic sentiment is that I wish, in a weird way, both for health reasons but also just for funny reasons, I wish that the world felt more post-apocalyptic right now. It feels too normal, and the danger with it feeling too normal is that it mitigates the possible danger of what's actually going on. But at the same time, my brain is saying to me, so is what they're saying on the news actually going on? Because when I look out of my window, it's just, I don't know, it's just frustrating, I think.
Yeah, and I think that whole these people doing the toilet paper hoarding, things like that, I think that's actually feeding the people who think this is just a big, overblown thing.
How much are these people going to be shitting? That's what I want to know, Matt. Has anyone figured out the numbers? Has anyone gone and done the important work?
Yes, exactly.
Because also, who are these people? When this hit, right, I went into our bathroom and Kim and I had, 3 or 4 rolls of toilet paper available, right? And I went out and I bought one more roll, one more packet, so that now we have around, 8 or 9 rolls of toilet paper or whatever it is, right? And I'm like, that's fine. Who was it when this crisis hit had no toilet paper at all? That's the other thing that I want to know. Who was it who went, oh shit, I don't even have any toilet paper. I need to go and buy, 78 rolls of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it boggles my mind. I was just like, we had some rolls. I bought some more rolls, and I bought some more rolls not because we needed more rolls or because I was trying to hoard toilet paper, but because everyone else was panic buying it. I had to get at least a packet, otherwise, 4 rolls later, and it would have been gone, Right,
well, that was how I felt. I was at Rite Aid on Wednesday, I think it was, and they had toilet paper. And I was like, I need to just buy a pack just to know that we've got it at least. If it's here, and I'm not going to buy too much, I'm going to leave plenty here for everybody else.
Right, but the trouble with panic buying is that it leads to more panic buying because essentially that first Friday night, last Friday or whenever it was, I came home from work and I just said to Kim, look, I'll hit up our 2 local supermarkets and get what I can because I didn't want to get to a point where the next Monday the mayor went, we're shutting it all down.
Yeah.
Everyone who panicked buy over the weekend, congratulations, because you're the only people who are going to have any food.
Right.
So I felt like I had to go. Not that I didn't go crazy. I got a bunch of canned food and some bread and cold cut. I got stuff that I could live off.
Right,
I didn't go nuts. I wasn't there was one couple in there who bought three enormous potato sack-sized bags of rice. And I'm like, if you live to 90, you'll never eat that much rice.
Well, not only that, but we've got a rice cooker here, and I'll make a good sized batch with the idea in mind that I'm going to make this batch on Monday and have rice throughout the week that I can make meals with.
Yeah.
And usually by Tuesday, I'm sick of rice.
No, of course.
So,
yeah.
Right. So it's it seems like a great idea. Yes, rice, you can use it in so many different things, but it's okay, now I need something else to eat. I can't have too many rice dishes, and so
right.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. It's it seems like a great idea, right? Having enough rice to make sure
Yeah.
But eventually you're going to get sick of it, and you can't eat it that much.
Also, we live in New York, Kim and I, and there's nowhere in an apartment, unless you're a millionaire, that has room for 3 enormous bags of rice. There just isn't. I mean, we're very lucky where we live because we have a slightly larger than average kitchen. and we have a landing, a hallway, because there's only 2 apartments in our building and a store on the ground floor. And so we have the 3rd floor, and it's all our floor, right? And there is a landing and stuff where the stairs come up. So, if we have any overflow of anything, we can put it out on the landing. So we're lucky in that regard, but that's a unique situation. So I mean, had I gone and bought, which I didn't, but had I gone and bought enough rice to literally kill 17 people, had I done that, then I would at least have somewhere to put it. This poor chap probably is sleeping on it at this point. His girlfriend's being like, "What did you do? You blew the rent on rice, you arsehole." Right.
Well, maybe he has a secret frauding addiction, and that's why he's getting the sacks, because he needed something. He was worried if they're going to close the grocery stores, they'll have nowhere to go, and he needed the sacks.
So that is a callback, ladies and gentlemen, to an episode of Drunk on VHS where Matt, Mo, and myself had to, or didn't have to, but were meant to be reviewing Salute to the Jugger, and ended up just talking about frotting, which for people who don't know what that is, it's essentially dry humping. So anyway, welcome to the During Quarantine Movie Diner. And we have on this week's show, I say this week's show, but I'm just going to be putting out shows whenever. So this particular show, we have Matt, and I can never get your second name right because there's 2 I's in it, and the second I just throws me. But Matt, and your last name is?
So we've anglicized it to Poirier to make it easier.
Okay, that's what I would have said. Okay, Poirier, that makes sense. Matt Poirier.
Yeah.
Whose claim to fame is the phenomenal blog and podcast direct-to-video Connoisseur, and his repeated and wonderful guest spots on the old Drunk on VHS show, which if you've been with us since the beginning of this podcast, hopefully you'll be familiar with. If you're just tuning in right now, I'm sorry, go find it. The Bat Cat is out there. It is available through the After Movie Diner radio station on Spreaker and on Apple Podcasts. So you can go back and listen to it. But yes, find the Matt, Mo, and me episodes, and they are particularly joyous. And there will no doubt be callbacks to it on this episode. So the During Quarantine Movie Diner is a slightly different setup, obviously, than the regular After Movie Diner, because we can't be in a diner, first of all. But secondly, because I'm going to be having revolving guests, which means I'm going to be asking all my guests to be just spinning round and round while I do their long introductions. But no, seriously, I'm going to try and get everyone who's ever been a guest on the show, plus all new podcasting and film friends that I have made since, on the show, and we are going to do little interviews about sort of the movies that made them, but also have them pick a top 5, so we can kind of discuss the top 5 and use it as a jumping off point to talk about general film stuff. That is the new format for the foreseeable future. So Matt, with all of that rambling, why don't you let the listening several know what your top 5 was, and just in general, your movie background?
Yeah, so, I mean, my top 5 was Albert Pyun films. And with the direct-to-video Connoisseur, Albert Pyun, I think, is... to call him polarizing, I think would be kind of an understatement. He's someone that... and it's not even a matter of like whether you love him or you hate him. It's whether you love him or if there's some, or whether you hate him or if there's some that you kind of still enjoy or something like that with him. It seems like people are very, very polarized. But he's someone that I kind of got to know just because he would comment on the blog, which to his credit, when I reviewed Mean Guns, I was not very nice to it. I've kind of learned over time in doing reviews that people that do the movies might be reading them. And so, if I refer to a director as somebody that, a car commercial director could have done a better job on the movie, that director, which in this case was Albert Pyun, might read it and say, hey, and to his credit, he didn't say, like, who do you think you are? Have you ever tried to make a movie? Or, he didn't say anything like that. And then when I gave him a positive review, and actually I think it was another bad review that he commented on, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt on it. It was a movie called Urban Menace.
Right.
And it turned out that his 3 urban movies, when he went to when he filmed them in Bulgaria or wherever.
This was from the late 90s, early 2000s. Urban Menace, 99, yeah.
Yeah, so he did Urban Menace, Corrupt, and Wrecking Crew. And so he brought a whole bunch of rappers with him over to Bulgaria, shot 3 movies, and went back to America and found out that Air France had lost one of the crates of movies. And so he had to like cobble together, because I guess the way it worked was the company was like, well, you need to give us movies. You know, I don't care if you lost like a crate of movies. We're expecting something. So I watched Urban Menace and I'm like, and I said this, you know, with all due respect to him, I said, you know, Albert Pyun is a director. Like, he's a professional director. This looks like something that, you know, like a college student, you know, first year of film student would do for their project in college. Like, there's something wrong here. There's something not right. And he's like, boy, you really are a connoisseur, Matt. And so he's like, yes, actually something was wrong. I lost a crate of film. And that was kind of how he started talking to me about his movies and whatnot. And that's when he actually asked me to give Mean Guns, which is the one that I destroyed, it has me to give it another chance. But over time, I've kind of gotten a sense of what his approach is, what he likes to do with movies, and it's given me a better perspective on it, which I think some people might say, well, you know, because he's so nice to you, Matt, maybe you're just, you know, kind of defending him, which I can understand that as well. But yeah, I think that's one reason why I've kind of gotten to like his movies, and you know, but in trying to come up with this list, I did notice there were a lot of times where I was like, you know, that's one that there was something wrong with that movie. There's something that he tried to do that didn't quite work for me. Right.
Well, I mean, he's an interesting guy, because I think that when it comes to when people kind of talk about low budget or B movie or straight to video film directors, lots of different names come up. In fact, we just, the recent episode of Direct-to-Video Connoisseur that I was on, we talked at length about Fred Williamson's career as sort of an indie producer-director. But I mean, most people can talk about, you know, Roger Corman or Charles Band. Pardon me, sorry. Mouth is drying up. Roger Corman, Charles Band, Lloyd Kaufman, like these kind of heavy hitters or very obvious low-budget directors, right? Very obvious. These are the guys that have stayed the course and, you know, come out on top kind of thing. And from those various stables, whether it's Troma, Full Moon, or Empire originally, and the Roger Corman stable, lots of other directors and actors and stuff have moved through those doors. And you've got, obviously, actors who on their way up wouldn't have touched them, but on their way down, end up being in one of those movies or end up doing a lot of those movies. With Albert Pyun, what's interesting is he doesn't really come from sort of any of those schools, although he's worked with various different people throughout his career. So he's worked with like PM Entertainment, right, or Canon.
Canon, but yeah, not PM Entertainment, but definitely Canon. I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones. I mean, Canon. That's the history, right? That's where he's had not only the successes, but also a lot of the contentious moments in working with them. I was trying to think of some of the other ones that he has worked with.
He did Full Moon, of course, because he did Doll Man, and has worked. In fact, that's the other thing that I like about Albert Pyun is that it's clear that. It's clear that he's not like some sort of massive asshole, because people work with him time and time again. It says a lot to me, especially on a B-movie set, if you have actors who come back and work with you time and time again. There's one thing to be a guy who's like, well, I'm an actor, I'm a bit down on my luck, but I'm a name, and maybe I could like pull this B-movie straight-to-video thing out of the bargain bin for 5 minutes, and I'll go do this movie, and even if it sucks, and even if it's for a ham sandwich in Bulgaria, I'll do it once, and then I'll move on. But people like Tim Thomason, who I have great respect for, Rutger Hauer, who I have great respect for, Ice-T, and various other actors whose names you probably know down the cast list, because I know that you mentioned a guy who shows up a couple of times in some of the movies we're going to talk about, whose name escapes me right now. But people work with him time and time again. He's his own, even though he's wandered in and out of Full Moon and Canon and so on, he's sort of his own thing, like an Albert Pyun joint is sort of unique to him. And the other thing, the last thing I would say is I found out yesterday if you're a movie collector in general, you and a genre film collector in general, you probably own way more movies of his than you're aware of. Like, I was able to dig out, I apparently owned like 10 of his films.
Right. Well, that's how, like, how he ended up in the direct-to-video Connoisseur Hall of Fame, actually, was that I started, noticing his name come up when I was doing movies for the blog, and I was like, why did I see how many times we've done one of his movies? And it was like, I think we'd done like 20 of his movies without me even really thinking about it. And I think that's part of it, too. You're right, is that, like, for a lot of B-movie fans, there's probably a lot of movies that you didn't even know. I mean, like, Kickboxer 4, which I don't know how many people would have that in their collection, but
and Kickboxer 2, of course, he did
that one as well.
Yeah. I love that he did 2. Was like, nah, I'm not going to do 3. Oh wait, 4 is being made. Sure, I'll go back and do 4.
Well, see, what I think it is that I think with him is that actors seem to really enjoy working with him. Studios, I don't think so much, because he kind of does his own thing.
Right.
I was trying to think of the best way to maybe compare him to like a Wynorski or a Fred Olen Ray, and I think it's like maybe doing a callback to another time when you Mo and I were together. Let's say we've got our movie Hobo Butt Flute that we want to make. We've got our 80-page script, and we're the studio.
We would definitely have an 80-page script for a concept like Hobo Butt Flute.
Right.
Yeah, and that would definitely be a full moon film.
Right. Exactly.
No pun intended, or maybe all the puns intended. I don't know.
So, we give it to Wynorski or Fred Olen Ray, and 2 weeks later, we've got something under budget that is close to what we were looking for. It's not going to be like, Seventh Seal or something like that, but it's going to do the trick, and we'll be able to get it out there. We give it to Pyun, and maybe a week after filming starts, we look at it and we're like, what is going on here? We've got cyborgs and post-apocalyptic futures on other planets, and this is not what we were looking for Hobo Butt Flute. Maybe it becomes absolutely nothing, and it's a complete
we have
joke.
Punk mutant bikers. We have people who think they're in the 1940s.
Right. We're like, what's going on here? And then, I think some studios go, no, this is not the Hobo Butt Flute we wanted, and they take it back from him and try to give it to someone like a Wynorski to save it, or they just go, okay, whatever, they try to change it in post after, or you just kind of let it happen. And with Pyun, you just never know, too, because like he was one of the first ones to work with rappers. And then, before it was like if you use rappers in movies, it had to be like a Boys in the Hood type movie. You didn't feel like you could put rappers in movies in another context, but he started doing that, using them in action movies and things like that. Or he does a movie like Spitfire that's essentially Spy Kids, later on down the road. So Who knows? Maybe our Hobo Butt Flute is, Marvel's, instead of doing Infinity Gauntlet, they're doing Hobo Butt Flutes or something.
Listen,
like that.
I would be all over that.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Amazing. But that's what makes Pyun unique, is that he has his own thing, and again, like Van Damme did not like that he had his own thing for Cyborg, and he pushed to get that movie changed. And I think we're going to talk about that later with another movie. But he didn't get along with him because of that. And but as you said, a lot of actors, they like working with Pyun. He has what I always joke about, the Pyun mainstays whenever I do one of his films. Like, who are the Pyun mainstays in this?
Yeah, you'd recognize that more than I would. I was trying to do like a quick Pyun school yesterday. Like, I was trying to. I've seen a bunch of his stuff. I've seen Captain America and Nemesis and a bunch of sort of the big ones, and Mean Guns actually. But I hadn't sat down and like done a Pyun-a-palooza, which I did yesterday.
Right, exactly. It's funny about Captain America, because he told me that he was also tasked by Canon to do a Spider-Man, and they couldn't do it with the budget that was allowed. They said essentially the problems of the Broadway production ran into with the wires and all of that. That they were having, and they just couldn't do it. I mean, can you imagine a Captain America and Spider-Man by Pyun?
Well, I have to say what I love, and I know that and I wonder if he's in the Hall of Fame. But what I love looking through both the Pyun films, but also the Fred Williamson films from the last episode where we talked about, is the fact that between like 98 and 2004. Ice-T just was like, I'm going to make a bunch of B movies, and I have to like respect the hell out of that, because Ice-T ended up being in some Albert Pyun joints. He ended up being in Fred Williamson films. He ended up being like like Leprechaun 5 in the hood. So I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go down an Ice-T rabbit hole, but maybe you should look to put Ice-T in the B-movie Hall of Fame, because my goodness, has he paid his dues, as they say?
Yeah, he's definitely a consideration because, like you said, I mean, and I think, Pyun was one that gave, I think was one of the early ones he worked with, and I think also as well, like you said, with Fred Williamson, who, it's interesting when you think of directors in the DTV Hall of Fame, it's, Pyun, Williamson, and Cirio H. Santiago, so quite an interesting crew there. I mean, hopefully, Wynorski and Olin Ray down the road maybe, but, that's one of the things with Ice-T is I think Pyun was one of the ones who was like, okay, let's do something with him. Yes, we want him to be a gangster. I mean, he's always like kind of a gangster in the movies,
right? But
it's not just him playing. He kind of saw something in using him, and I think the same thing with Fred Williamson, that they saw something, and next thing you know, he's in Law and Order, and
right.
I mean, on a regular show, and I think people were wondering about that too. I think when he got cast in Law and Order, there was some skepticism, and they paired him with Richard Belzer, I think, on Special Victims Unit, and I think there was skepticism.
Belzer, who has played the same character since the first episode of Homicide.
Right.
He has played Munch on something. I think he's played that character more than any other person has played a character ever. He is I think he's appeared in every version of Law and Order except Law and Order UK. I think, is the only one he hasn't appeared in. Although I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, I would not put Belzer past him. He's like, free trip to the UK? Sure, I'll show up and play Munch in, like, I don't know, Munch Goes to London or some episode.
Exactly. That would be fantastic. Or maybe even if he was just vacationing in London, they were like, hey, we're shooting. And like, okay.
Yeah, great. I'll just come by. I'll put on the sunglasses. I'll walk through the cop room, and then I'll get out again. It doesn't really matter. You just assume that Belzer is somewhere. Like if a Law and Order episode is being made, you assume Belzer has a trailer, even if he's not in that episode.
Right, he's somewhere in the. And what else is he going to do? He's Richard Belzer. He's this is he's like, hey, you need Munch somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, come on, let's have Munch show up just randomly. Yeah. I love that, though. They've never killed him off, I don't think. I don't know. No. I mean, Kim watches the later series of Law and Order, SVU, which I love, too. I mean, just the John Mulaney stand-up about Ice-T in Law and Order SVU is spot on, because it's really the reason why we all watch it, is for is for Ice-T to be talking about how much semen they found. But because it's so fucking rad. Anyway, we've gone down that Ice-T rabbit hole, and I'm not quite sure why. But a point we were sort of making on your episode as well was about the fact that, and a reason why I will sort of extol the virtues of straight to video or B movies, call them whatever you want, till the day I die, is because. If you wanted diverse casts, if you wanted to see rappers in leading roles, if you wanted to see genre mashups, these movies were the only place you could do it. Hollywood was not knocking on Ice-T's door to star in a movie in quite the way that he could in the B movie realm. And so, people can knock them all they like, but they provide all the things that people say Hollywood doesn't have enough of. You know what I mean? So I'm always a big fan of that. And I think the other thing, we talk about Wynorski and Fred Olin Ray, and they are pretty good examples within the B movie directing world to kind of push up against Pyun. But I would say the difference being is this. Don't get me wrong, like I love Wynorski and I love Fred Olin Ray, and I get where they're coming from to some extent. But I also feel like they have a little bit of a contempt for their audience. And what I mean by that is they kind of go, as long as the monster rips someone's leg off and there's some CGI blood, and as long as a woman runs around topless, people will watch this movie. I don't ever get a feeling that they're trying to do more than they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you compare in Popatopoulos, the documentary about Wynorski, and I understand Wynorski's kind of slid into just making movie rip-off softcore porn stuff for Cinemax at this point. I don't know what he's going to do now that Cinemax has announced they're not doing that anymore. But or what anyone is going to do with Cinemax now that they're not doing that anymore. Because what is Cinemax if not for randomly weird softcore porn versions of movies people have forgotten about? But when Wynorski made his movie in 3 days, it didn't seem like such a feat, because essentially he just got 6 actresses, 3 actors in a hot tub in Colorado and just filmed them, faking orgasm, and then was like, that'll do, that's a movie. Whereas at least when Albert Pyun decides to make a movie in 3 days, yes, it's awful, but he at least he is at least trying to do something within that framework. He is at least lighting the shots properly, filming the dialogue properly, making sure that it looks cinematic, giving some idea to the actors about what he's trying to convey, even if that is lost in translation. What I just mean is, I get the feeling from watching Pyun films that he's like, I want to put that extra bit into this film that kind of makes it mine, and I'm genuinely like passionate about what I'm doing. It's not just this thing where he's like, well, I can knock this off in 3 days, put some tits in it, and away we go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think with Pyun, you might even say, like, he thinks too much of his audience, right? Like, he's like,
he expects us to sit through more dialogue than we really want to. Yeah.
Right. Or he thinks, I'm going to make this obscure reference to a 50s pulp, these 50s, pulp movies that I used to watch in cheap theaters growing up in the 60s. I'm going to throw references to that in there and expect my audience to get it. And they're going to go on IMDb and give it 1 star and say, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And,
right.
he almost takes it to, right. He's kind of the opposite extreme. And, but I agree with you. I think I like the fact that he's going to go there and take whatever criticism he's going to get for it as well.
Yeah. And I just think, there are almost, and I'm sure there's more than this, but there's almost like 2 B-movie style audiences. Yep. There are the guys who watch stuff, and it is guys. I say guys because it is predominantly guys who watch stuff, ironically, watch it for the tits and gore, do not care about anything else. If it doesn't give them some ironic laugh, they're not interested. They want to feel above something, and they kind of want to look down on whatever's being done. And then I feel like there's the film audience, a general film audience, which I would more put myself in, that when they go view film in all its levels and in all its budgets and get as much out of, in fact, often more, out of something that is low budget, that is trying to do something, that is trying to achieve something, that might not quite hit it out of the park, but is at least playing the game as well as they can, than I do often out of a Hollywood film that, again, often Hollywood films get to are very similar to Wynorski films. They say to their audience, as long as we put a car chase every 10 minutes, you're happy, right? They don't often bother to write a script, write a character, string the violence and the sex scenes together. They very often just kind of put this stuff out there. And it's very cynical filmmaking. And I have as much problem with that as I do with the people who watch, Lava Lantula or whatever on Sci-Fi. And ironically, I mean, and I think that, there is a vein of B movies that where, like I say, at least they're playing the game. And the quick schooling I did of Albert Pyun yesterday was more that I realized that the one thing he does have in all his movies is he's slavishly taken the idea of the MacGuffin that Hitchcock famously talked about and has now become kind of film school lore. and certainly something like a Lucas or a Spielberg has used this technique a lot as well. But he slavishly thinks that the MacGuffin is kind of all he needs, whether that's the revenge and the 3-bladed sword in Sword and the Sorcerer, whether that's the keys to a nuclear weapon in Radioactive Dreams, whether that's the I'm an alien sex fiend, and I've, in Deceit, whatever it is, like he finds, the red lotus flower in Brain Smasher, whatever, he'll slavishly go, well, as long as all the people in the film are looking for this thing, right, that's a movie. You kind of go, it's not. You've lit it very well. You've put a bunch of people on motorbikes. That's exciting. I don't know that these two nuclear keys, in the case of Radioactive Dreams, that were buried in a hillside with two dudes watching 1940s movies, when they come out and they realize the danger of the keys, just destroy them. Like, why? Then the movie's over.
Right. Because I think that's his thing, right? Is that it's like, okay, you've got your like you said, like you're sort of that MacGuffin, that kind of that piece that it's sort of centered around, and then he's like, let me just make it as stylish around the rest of it as possible. Right. Let me add as much accoutrement, as I guess we could say, maybe.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I watch it, like with Radioactive Dreams, I liked it, that they were the kind of the tone and all of the stuff that he just kind of threw in at it.
Right.
Alien from LA, maybe not so much, right? You gotta just and I think that's what's always interesting with him, is that he has like all of these influences that he just wants to put into the movie and make it look a certain way. With his basic plot. And I mean, it's interesting because, I don't like to talk about Woody Allen too much, but, Woody Allen, it's like for a while, he was making a movie a year, and you'd start to see scripts being recycled. Like, okay, how many different ways can he do crimes and misdemeanors? And I think that's kind of what Pyun does as well. Like, how many ways can okay, it's keys in this movie, it's the red lotus flower in that movie, it's, and it's so it's like you said, it's always kind of the same thing. And then it's just what can he do around it? And it's like, does what he puts around it work, or is it you're kind of like, no, it's not enough? And
that's why I think, for me, if he has any weaknesses, it's definitely the scripts.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's a cost-cutting measure to have him write the scripts himself, and I'm sure he himself enjoys writing. So I'm sure that's why he does it, or whatever. I don't know. As I say, while I have been aware of Albert Pyun for a long time, this is really my first deep dive into his stuff. But it's almost like he needed a best friend who was like a really good punch-up guy that wasn't going to cost the earth, wasn't going to blow the budget out by demanding script rewrite or even name on the credits, but someone who could just come in and be like, no, make this character this guy, make this scene this thing, give an extra layer of reasoning why everyone is chasing this seemingly innocuous MacGuffin, and do a better ending than there seems to be a lot of endings. Maybe it's just Radioactive Dreams and Sword of the Sorcerer, but the big ending move is someone either swings on something or slides down something. There seems to be a lot of ending moves where they're like, because I think, again, he's watched a lot of Hollywood films from the 40s and 50s. His key thing seems to be film noir meets swashbuckling meets Blade Runner, essentially.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
It's so odd as well that everyone watched Blade Runner in 1982 and then just went, let's do that for 10 years. like everyone just did Blade Runner for 10 years.
I know. And what's amazing is Blade Runner didn't do Blade Runner for that period. They waited until well after, and they thought, okay, now let's do it with Ryan Gosling and see what happens. And so, they were the ones who could have been doing it all that time, and they're just putting out different director's cuts and whatnot. But
you're right. It's like when Die Hard came out, everyone was just like, well, just do Die Hard. It's Die Hard and Blade Runner. It's really just, we'll do that.
Yes, those are the two, yeah. I mean, Die Hard, everybody jokes about Die Hard in a blank, right? Because it's just like, what can we do it in what location can we add to it? And then I think Seagal with Under Siege added the female tag along to the paradigm,
and the fact that it was they were on a boat, but on the second one he's on a train, which is hilarious anyway, because Seagal on a train, he could fit in a train. So, yeah.
It's always great. One thing that's interesting about the script part of it is his wife and business partner now, Cynthia Kernan, she has been writing a lot of the scripts lately. So
how has that helped?
Yeah, I mean, the past 10 years, I mean, it's been a little bit less of that kind of, but, I think she did Tales of an Ancient Empire, which the hard thing with Tales of an Ancient Empire, which was supposed to be the sequel to Sword of the Sorcerer, is that I think
she promised right after Sword of the Sorcerer,
right, exactly.
and took 40 years to make it.
It was in the credits. That's one of the interesting things is, like, if you go to, like, his websites and things like that, he's just always, this project's coming, this one's coming along. And, now I believe, he has MS, and that's been, affecting things. But, back in 1983, that wasn't the case. He was just, and who knows? I mean, that movie was so successful. I mean, I think it was by far the most successful of his movies. I think I looked on IMDb, it made like $40 million in 1983, which is huge. I can't believe they weren't knocking down his door to be like, dude, just make Tales of an Ancient Empire. Just do whatever you got to do to make that. It's probably one for the stories. Because I've been out of contact with him for the past 4 or 5 years, so I haven't since I was on hiatus. But I've never asked him, like, why didn't he just do another one? Why didn't that happen?
Well, what I love, we were talking about Die Hard, and of course, Albert did his own Die Hard version in 1997. So 12 years later, they're still making Die Hard ripoffs. And his one, he's like, yeah, it is going to be in a building again, which is very Die Hard. But how about we make it the Olympic swim team, which is because I'm pretty sure if someone tomorrow took the Olympic swim team hostage, no one would know about it.
Yes.
It would not be news. I'm not to disparage Olympics or swimming, but I just mean people are like, we can replace them, right?
Right, exactly.
We can find 12 other swimmers.
Yes, well, I love too that he's like, he hears about the Richard Jewell thing and thinks, okay, the Richard Jewell thing, like Clint Eastwood's got to make some big movie about it, however many 20 years later. But Pyun hears it and he's like, yeah, let me make a Die Hard movie with Andrew Divoff and whoever else was in that movie.
Lyndon Ashby.
Has a small team. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So it's hilarious that kind of the difference where that Pyun is just like he hears something, he's like, I got to do something with it. Yeah. And that's what you end up with.
Yeah, you've got a janitor, Jack Bryant, has to stop terrorists who are holding the U.S. Olympic swim team hostage. Because that would be a thing that terrorists would do.
Right, exactly.
Go over to the American infidels. What is it that we really hate about them? Well, we hate their money, their wealth, their corporations. No, I know all that, but what else do we really hate about them? Well, we hate that they're always talking about their military might and their, international policies. I know we hate that, but what else do we hate about them? I don't know, their sports. Sure, sports. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what do we hate about sport? Baseball. We hate baseball. No, baseball's too big. American football's too big. Think smaller. We don't have the money. Right. And eventually, like 3 days into the planning, they go, a U.S. Olympic swim team? That's it. Take them hostage. That'll get the ball rolling on our terrorist agenda.
Well, what's funny is now you think about the whole Ryan Lochte thing. Like, there probably would have been an applause scene if, like, they had done it in today with the men's swim team with a Ryan Lochte character who's like the first one to get shot and thrown out the window.
Right.
They would be so maybe in that sense that you could do it today, and it would actually make more sense today than it did back then. Where you're right, nobody really cared about the swim team.
Although it did just get a Blu-ray release, and so it did just kind of get released as if it was a new film, even though it's been out for 20 years.
Yeah. I was at the MVD site. I was kind of interested in the movies. I mean, the Nemesis ones made sense. Crazy Six didn't quite make as much sense that was also getting a Blu-ray release from Albert Pyun.
Listen, when the studios, and I was talking about this with Jim on the previous episode of Stuck in Quarantine After Movie Diner, when the studios turn their back on their back catalog and their physical media, someone has to pick up the slack. And if that means we get a Blu-ray of Crazy Six, starring Ice-T and Burt Reynolds and Rob Lowe. I mean, come on, guys. Were you all hurting that much in 1997 that you had to star in an Albert Pyun joint?
Yes. I know. And, I mean, Rob Lowe in that one too. It's like, like his one feature that he sells the most is his face. And what does he have, like a mustache or something? I mean, he's like, I'm trying to remember. Like, he was just completely haggard in that film. It was like, It was amazing. I mean, yeah, Pyun, like with his, if you go to his website, he lists all the people he's worked with. Yeah. It's like a paragraph long of people. But he did one with Charlie Sheen called Postmortem.
Of course he did.
Yeah, and it takes place in Scotland.
You couldn't say anything that would surprise me at this point. You know what I mean? He did one with Max von Sydow called Hat Stand. I don't know, like.
That would have. It's funny because some of the people he hasn't worked with surprise me more. Like he's never done anything with Cynthia Rothrock. Never did anything with Dolph. And I mean with Dolph, I bet you anything that Canon, when they did the Masters of the Universe, I bet you they probably did try to get Pyun on that, and they were just like, "There's no way this guy is going to do what we need him to do to get this thing under budget." And they were just like, they were frightened about the idea of He-Man with an eye patch in a post-cyberpunk, post-apocalyptic future.
Although what they got. What they got, if someone told me that Albert Pyun had directed Master of the Universe, I would almost believe it. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore the Dolph Lundgren Master of the Universe. Unironically, I absolutely adore it. I have very fond memories of it as a child, and I still watch it to this day. It's one of those, it's up there with Howard the Duck for me. Everyone shits on it from a great height, but I love it, and I love it unabashedly. But the thing that blew my mind was when that first came out on Blu-ray, on DVD, when Masters first came out on DVD a long time ago, the old Snapcase version. Mm-hmm. I think all it has on it is a director's commentary. There might be an old behind the scenes EPK, but on the director's commentary of Master of the Universe, he talks about it like he was making Amadeus or Phantom of the Opera or something. Like he talks about it in these grandiose terms, and I'm like, dude, you did not need to build Skeletor's throne room on like the largest soundstage in Hollywood. Like you could have literally built that in my living room and just either green screened and or matte painted the rest of it. Nobody can.
Right. Yeah, it was funny because he was talking about how how Masters of the Universe was done, it was set on Earth to be able to do it on the cheap. And he was like, but, it came out good. And I was thinking to myself, well, no, the idea was still sauteed in wrong sauce. Like the movie, you can have fun with it or not. But the idea that, He-Man was taking place on Earth to save money, for me, it was like, well, maybe you shouldn't have made it. But they made it because the idea was that, it was a big property, and I guess it ended up sinking them.
Also, the big problem with that is it's much cheaper to shoot in the desert with some rocks and a few people in loincloths and a couple of, plastic laser guns than it is to, lock off streets in towns and blow up synthesizer stores and set fire to a gymnasium and, all that stuff that happen and have mad keys and things that are made that are apparently looks like a new Japanese synthesizer. Said nobody ever. And getting Courtney Cox, and everything they do in that movie is antithetical to saving money. If they literally wanted to do, which the opening scenes seem to make it like they want to, is that sort of dusty, desert-bound Star Wars thing, they should have done it. Also, why invent a character that has to have head-to-toe prosthetics when you could have just had a guy in a red hat and gown and a black mask over his face being Orko?
Yes,
you could have done that super easily, and then all of a sudden all these characters show up in head-to-toe prosthetics. None of these people are even in He-Man.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Knowing He-Man as I did growing up with it, it's like, there's a B guy. There's the B guy is pretty easy to replicate. You just put him in a mascot suit and with his little pincer things, and Faker, he's just Dolph Lundgren painted blue. You could just have Dolph Lundgren painted blue and you've got another character there. Technically the way it was supposed to work, right, was that Dolph should have been playing all the characters in He-Man, right? Because they're all just He-Man's body with a different head on it. So he should have just been wearing masks and being everybody in the movie. So that would have worked out better, I guess.
Yeah, but I like I think that knowing the history of things, and I love DVD commentaries and Blu-ray making ofs and all the rest of it, I never want them to go away. But almost when you see behind a film like He-Man Master Universe, it almost ruins it. When you watch it unencumbered by any knowledge of what they were either trying to do or whatever, you're just like, this is so insane, it's kind of brilliant. And I feel that way about Pyun's films as well. Yeah. It's like the few that I watched yesterday, I have to say that by the middle of Deceit, I was, the brain was running out of my ears, and I couldn't quite keep up at that point. But what I like about it is the inventiveness. I mean, if you watch Sword and the Sorcerer and Radioactive Dreams back to back like I did yesterday, neither makes a lick of sense. I haven't got a fucking clue what's happening in either film. Very difficult to follow. But they look the business. Everyone is giving it 110% with either the swashbuckling and or the mutant punks. Everyone is giving it the beans, and they look $1 million, and as long as you don't really care about what's going on, there's a shed ton of inventiveness that's being thrown about the place. And my only thing is I wish he had a slightly better writer and a slightly better editor. But outside of that, I can't really complain about either of those two films at all, for outside of the fact they don't make a lick of sense. So at this point, Matt, as we head into the last 25 minutes, why don't you let everyone know what your top 5 was? And we've talked about some of them, but we can start kind of breaking them down a little bit.
Yeah, so my first one, of course, was that one we talked about before the show, called Road to Hell, which was Pyun's sequel to Streets of Fire, starring Michael Pare. And I have no idea why this movie did not get released on DVD, because there's a couple that happen around it, like Left 4 Dead, Bullet Face, that you can get on Amazon on DVD. I don't know what happened to this one. I don't know why. I don't even know if you can get it through.
I wish I'd watched that one instead of Deceit.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah,
I didn't realize it was a musical. It's a Pare sequel to Streets of Fire.
Yeah, exactly. And so it does have some music in it.
Right.
It's like if you think of everything about Pyun in his other movies, it's almost like he puts all of those elements together, and it works. The only reason why I have it at number 5 is just the fact that it's so hard to find it. It's like, it's hard to tell people how great a movie is. And like I was digging through emails and stuff to find that the link to the screener that I'm pretty sure they sent me a screener to watch it when it first came out. And he wanted my feedback on it, and I gave him some ideas about what I liked, and maybe some parts of it that didn't as much work for me, but overall, it's like everything we were just talking about with Peanuts. It goes into that movie and it works. One weird thing about that one as well, there was a Facebook account that was named for Michael Pare. I don't know if it was really him or not. He first commented on Pyun's post about the movie, and then he messaged me, direct messaged me, asking when the review was going to be up. And I told him about that. And it didn't feel like it was really Pare's account, but Pyun was responding to it like it was. So I thought, okay, I'll just go with it. But when I was looking for the link, that account no longer exists. So somebody was masquerading as Michael Pare, I believe, around that time, trying to get information.
It's funny. I think weird B-movie celebrities do like fling themselves onto Facebook for a minute and then disappear again. I always wonder, like, there's a guy on Facebook who says he's Yaphet Kotto, commented frequently on the Larry Cohen stuff when that was coming out, the documentary about Larry Cohen, and also when Larry passed, because obviously they'd worked together in Bone. Seemingly was Yaphet Kotto, the way he was talking, but everything else on his Facebook page is about like mad alien conspiracies, like everything else.
I guess, okay.
Which I've heard that Yaphet Kotto is a bit bonkers at this point, so I'm willing to accept that he's somewhere sat in a room typing mad alien conspiracies on Facebook. In fact, I kind of hope he is. Yeah. But also, if it isn't him, if it's some mad alien conspiracist in the Midwest who's just like, I'm going to pluck a name out of a hat and pretend to be Yaphet Kotto, which equally is also psychologically questionable. The fact that he was then commenting seriously on Larry Cohen stuff, I'm like, wait, are you taking this Yaphet Kotto thing to the next level? But yeah, it can often be disturbing as well, because the few actors who I grew up really admiring, who then show up on social media and turn out to be nasty, belligerent freaks, bothers me. Like the guy Dwight Schultz, who obviously plays Howling Mad Murdoch in the A-Team. And by the way, like, I absolutely adore the A-Team, but the more you find out about that TV series, there's like, it's so wrong what they did to the female stars and how they all behaved and how George Peppard behaved to Mr. T. And like, there is so much about that series that is just horribly, horribly wrong. But Dwight Schultz always seemed to be, even though playing Howling Mad Murdoch, whenever you saw him interviewed, he always seemed to be very benevolent and lovely and kind of cuddly and soft and friendly and like the uncle you'd want and all the rest of it. Like, always seemed like a nice guy in interviews, right? And you kind of thought to yourself, much like the Golden Girls with like B. Arthur being this person who behind the scenes, you know, there was issues with, but you always kind of thought, well, you know, Betty White and Rue McClanahan were like best friends and they like would hang out and do their own thing. And I kind of thought that about Dwight Schultz. I was like, he was above all the bullshit that happened on the set. Then I followed him on Facebook only to find he is a horrible right-wing bigot. And I'm like, oh, okay then.
Yeah, I ran into that with Robert Davi. He actually...
Robert Davi, yeah. He's another one, yeah.
Yeah, he commented on a review I did of a Dolph movie that he was in, essentially correcting me because I was saying that his English accent in the movie was coming in and out, that it was inconsistent.
There's a Robert Davi movie where he tries to do an English accent. Okay,
I believe it's called Blood of Redemption. Okay. And so he told me that his character was supposed to have been in the United States for many years, and so he was trying to imitate people who are from England whose accent fades, but then if they're in the presence of Vinnie Jones, it becomes thicker again. And so I gave him credit for trying that. I was like, okay, that's what you're going for. I appreciate that. And we follow each other on Twitter, and he's always posting stuff like that. And I went back and looked because I was like, I've been off for many years. I wonder who's still following me. And he was still following me. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to let him post what he's going to post or whatever, and it could be damaging to the country if it's he's posting things that aren't true, but he still respects me enough because I'm occasionally my bedwetting liberal stuff that I post every once in a while. He doesn't seem to care about that too much, but yeah, that was how I met him, or not met him, but he commented on that post. But that was what he was telling me, was that his English accent was inconsistent because he was trying to imitate somebody who'd been in the United States for a long time.
I just love that we live in a world now where someone like yourself or someone like myself can get into a conversation with Robert Davi about how his English accent, because he was in a movie with Dolph Lundgren and Vinnie Jones. Like, we live in that world where if someone says Dolph Lundgren, Vinnie Jones, and Robert Davi, people go, yeah, sure, that sounds like...
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The whole story makes sense, right? Exactly. And he's commenting on the post and following me on Twitter, and I follow back, and it's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
And I have to say that when I interviewed Robert Davi, he was an absolute sweetheart. He was really very generous and lovely to talk to, and even asked at the end of it, he was like, so how is the website going, and how is the show going, and I hope this gets good numbers, and I hope this helps you out. And like, he was a really lovely guy. But yes, I still follow him on Twitter as well. But because he's not James Woods level
that's true.
Problematic. He is a vocal Republican, and he certainly doesn't share my views, but he's a lot more respectful than James Woods is, and a lot less prone to hyperbole and idiocy. He also gets like less attention than James Woods does.
Right, that's true too.
Maybe if he got more attention, he would. But no, Robert Davi was lovely. But anyway, sorry. Road to Hell, Michael Pare, sequel to Streets on Fire. So
that was my number 5. Now my number 4 is going to be slightly controversial because I actually did this on a podcast with Jamie back when we were doing the show before my hiatus. It's called Brain Smasher: A Love Story, which I think you own on DVD as well.
I do. It was one of those where you were like, Brain Smasher, and I'm like, wait, I own that movie.
I own that one. Yes.
It was one that back when we started Dr. Action years and years ago, Doc, bless him, used to go to thrift stores in the UK, buy up movies on DVD for like 50 cents or whatever, or the equivalent of 50 cents, 50p, and mail them to me. And he used to mail me huge bundles of British action DVDs, and Brain Smasher was one of them, and I still have it to this day. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, it's one of those ones I think that's almost exactly what you were talking about, where it's like the plot it's either simplistic in parts or just kind of all over the place, but it's the stylish part. It feels like a movie that if I were doing like kind of a like a showdown, a Big Trouble in Little China type romp movie night, I would slot that in maybe later in the evening when people are starting to kind of fall asleep.
When people are high or drunk.
Right, exactly. People have had they're the six pack, the 6 month, or whatever. That's where I would slot it in. Like, I don't think I wouldn't put it on that level of Big Trouble in Little China. I wouldn't put it there for that. But for what Pyun was trying to do with it, I thought it was a lot of fun for me. The fact that it was Andrew Dice Clay and Terry Hatcher. I mean, we know Terry Hatcher's career takes off soon after that, so I don't know how she felt about doing romance and love scenes with Andrew Dice Clay, who I think he was just Andrew Clay in that movie. But
the Dice Man plays a bouncer called the Brain Smasher. Terry Hatcher plays a fashion model who is embroiled into a world of Asian espionage and whatever because of a red lotus flower that her sister mails her. Like, it's so whatever.
Yeah, and it's like you're watching this ludicrousness happen, and then there's like a scene where like Terry Hatcher is like kind of running from Yuji Okamoto and some other people while there's a big, huge advertisement for her behind her, and it's like the scene just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think for me, in a case like that, maybe it is more about style over substance, and because it's a fun kind of romp action movie type thing as well. But for me, and like I said, when I watched this with Jamie, she did not agree with me. She was kind of like, she didn't come out right out and say it, but I had a sense that it was like, why did you pick this, Matt? Or why did you tell me this was so good?
Yeah.
I'm beginning to question your judgment. She didn't come out and say it. I think she was trying to be kind to me about it. But so it's not for everybody. It's definitely a Matt's favorite as opposed to trying to make some kind of definitive best of Albert Pyun. But
I think one thing I would say is that don't do what I did. Do not binge watch Pyun films. You need to leave about 2 weeks between each viewing of a different film, because by binge watching by the third one, like I said, you're just like, wait, this again? I don't know what's going on. Who's that person? Why is he shouting? Why is that happening? What's the MacGuffin? Where are they going? Who's that thing? And then once you stop asking every question, you go, it's really nice the way he's lit this scene. Like the lighting coming through that big fan on the wall looks kind of nice. Anyway, what's your number 3, sir?
So my number 3 is Radioactive Dreams, kind of for the same reason as Brain Smasher, but I think it does Brain Smasher even better. That the stylistic aspects of it. We were joking when you were posting the posters of it yesterday, and it had like 18 genres, in the tagline, which is very Pyunish, and I just think it worked on that sense. I liked, I thought Dudikoff was fun in it. Of course, it had your mainstays as well, like Norbert Weiser and those. But yeah, I think the stylistic elements of it to me just really worked. And I think of a lot of other movies of his that were close, but not quite as much Radioactive Dreams. Like Omega Doom is one that I really liked that was stylistic as well, but had some more like goofier elements to it. Like, androids walking around and making noises, robot noises or whatever. But the Nemesis movies, especially the early ones with like Olivier Gruner, this one seemed to have those more. Like it did. I think the film noir part of it did it more for me. And so, yeah, that's why I put that one at number 3.
Well, what's funny about this one for me is it's a movie and a poster and a cover art that I have seen since my video store days in the 80s and 90s. Like, it's been around, and it was definitely one that I was like, like I knew the poster when I saw it, but I'd never watched it. The second thing that was really surprising to me is I've always watched the first American Ninja and just thought, even though in American Ninja the character that Dudikoff is playing is meant to be like sullen and monosyllabic and not and keeps himself to himself and all the rest of it, I just always thought that Dudikoff was just really wooden, and it wasn't until like later in his films, because very often actors like Dudikoff, who are more either for their looks or for their martial arts or for whatever reason, are in a movie, they get better with time, right? So a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, while his action might be better in his earlier ones, his acting is better in the later ones, and so on and so forth. But actually, it turns out, like in Radioactive Dreams, which was made around the same kind of time as American Ninja, or certainly comes out the same kind of time, Dudikoff's actually acting in it, and I was actually kind of blown away by it, and it actually gave me a new appreciation of American Ninja, because I'm like, wait, in American Ninja, he's actually playing a character. It's not just that he's some wooden surfer dude who can't act. That's why he thinks the character is an American Ninja, because in this movie, he's fucking tap dancing and making out with people and doing wisecracks, and, you know, like he's the, what is it? He's like the wacky, he's like the Dean Martin kind of, no, he's like the Jerry Lewis, rather, to the other character's Dean Martin. And so, yeah, it's completely bizarre to see Dudikoff, like, certainly, I think my favorite part of the whole movie is Dudikoff, that and the way it looks. So we're slowly running out of time, I'm afraid. So let's go into number 2.
So number 2 is going to be definitely a controversial one. I picked Deceit for number 2.
Oh,
and it's just
jeez, really?
Yes, and it's because it is a middle finger movie to Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I love Cyborg, and Cyborg probably would have been here, Cyborg or Slingers,
right.
Whichever one would have been number 2. But I just love the idea of, like, I am so infuriated that this punk kickboxer kid who's in this movie is forcing me to do reshoots. So you know what? I'm going to take the equipment for these, and I'm going to make sure that I pick the locations I want for my movie Deceit and film the reshoots in those locations, and then after hours I'm going to shoot this movie. And yes, it's not the best movie by any stretch, but I love the idea of a middle finger movie, of just like...
Right, no, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so Pyun. It's so Pyun to just be like that. I don't think you would get that from another director who would just be so infuriated. They would either just leave and be like, fine, I don't want to deal with this, which eventually, right, Cyborg gets taken from Pyun, and he it's not the movie that he wanted it to be. And, you know, I think for me, I kind of like the Canon reshoot, the Canon edit a little bit better, but I think that the movie that Pyun wanted to make would have been for a better franchise. It would have been, you know, sequels that would have fit more. It would have been 90s syndicated TV shows. That's what, you know, Pyun's version had more foresight to it. It would have been a better movie overall, whereas, you know, Van Damme's was just further Van Damme's career and with it. You know, Pyun says, you know what, fine, you're going to do this with me. I'm going to do this instead. And so that's what I just love the idea of a movie being that. It is amazing. When I saw that in the credits, I was like, why did he thank Van Damme? Like, this movie, it was on the fence for me. It was iffy, you know, because like you said, it's kind of all over the place. And then I wrote, you know, he commented. He actually said in the comments, he's like, you know, I pasted the comments for you where he was just like, yeah, I was pissed that I had to do reshoots. And so I just, you know, I made sure I had the equipment on weekly rental so I could use it whenever I needed it. And I picked this locations.
Well, I watched the first 40 minutes of the movie, and by the time the so-called alien sex fiend, which as far as I could figure out was really just a grubby man in an overcoat, he was shouting at the woman repeatedly, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, in a high, squeaky, annoying whine. I'm like, yeah, no, this movie needs to shut up. So
yes. Well, and it's like, you know, you watch it, it's like it's all over the place, but then there's like this really great shot of Norbert Weiser sitting next to this huge clock thing that just looks fantastic. And it's like, yeah, it was one of those ones where I was like, I was iffy on it. And then when I heard that, I was just like, for me, like, that's like the greatest thing ever. Because I'm like kind of the ultimate, like, you know, like, yeah, don't tell me what, or I don't want to say don't tell me what to do, but I'm kind of the ultimate, like, yeah, you know, if you're going to take something away from me or, you know, be like that, here, I'll tell you where you can shove it, you know, or whatever. And,
oh yeah, and I love those stories as well, and I also love the, like, we clandestinely made a movie in 3 days while we were doing reshoots in a warehouse around the back. I do love that. So in the last couple of minutes, then, sir, what is your number 1?
So it is Sword and the Sorcerer. That is my favorite. Which it's kind of, I feel bad because it's his first movie, so it's almost like he only went downhill from there.
Right. But as a first movie, it should be good, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about him, because the only reason someone makes a second movie is because their first movie is worth a damn.
Yes, that's a good point. And I think this one, it takes the sword and sorcerer fantasy realm, which was huge at that time in the early 80s, and it turns a lot of the conventions on its ear. It makes it it's grittier. It's more violent, I think. Somebody actually did die in making the movie when that guy gets stabbed, that demon guy gets stabbed and thrown over a cliff. His character in the movie doesn't die, but in real life, the stuntman who jumped off the cliff died in that scene.
What? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to the Pyun commentary, and he mentioned that part. The Pyun commentary for that one is really fascinating because, like those scenes where they're like in Richard Lynch's dungeon area where there's like those torches everywhere lighting it. Yeah, apparently it was like over 100 degrees. It was just like extremely hot near those, and the actors had to do things in their big suits. That's probably why a lot of those sword and sorcery movies are done with very minimal clothing, because if they're lit by torches, they need to be able to cool off. So that's probably why they do skimpy outfits a lot for those movies. But it was interesting hearing from him like what he was going for in different scenes. But yeah, for me, the sword and sorcery realm, it's kind of one that I don't want to say I watch ironically. It's one that I kind of watch just for fun to get a kick out of it. Whereas this one, It did more things with it than I wasn't expecting. I mean, yes, it's goofy too, with a sword that shoots blades.
That's the most amazing thing. When I read in the description that it was a 3-bladed sword, I'm like, all right, okay, a 3-bladed sword. That sounds ridiculous. But I didn't realize that it shot 2 of the 3 blades.
Yes,
that is amazing.
And when you see that shooting, when that thing goes across the screen, it's hilarious because you think about how funny it looks as it's kind of moving across the screen. But then you think about today when they do special effects where they show a bullet, and it's like the air is moving, and that looks silly too. So it's like, I don't know how much better special effects have gotten over time. I think maybe there's just certain things that are going to look goofy no matter what.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the sword and sandal or the fantasy realm is a good realm for Pyun just because it allows. Those movies don't have to make sense, right? As long as he does in Sword and the Sorcerer, every time the hero, who I didn't know who he was meant to be for the longest time, but every time the hero showed up, the music went bum 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 bum, like when the hero showed up, and when the bad guy played by Richard Lynch, I'm like, well, I know Richard Lynch, so I know it's the bad guy. So as long as I had those 2 things figured out, everything else was fine. It could go as weird and as mad and as whatever as it wanted to, because none of those fantasy stories make any sense at all. It's literally, what I've always said about fantasy films is it's, Bibbly Bob goes to Bungly Boo with the magic staff, ring, sword, MacGuffin of Hrothgar and takes it to the, mountain, river, dungeon, whatever. Like it's just literally, and that goes for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that stuff and Star Wars and stuff that people talk about in lofty tones like it's nonsense. It's people with silly names going to places with silly names, needlessly silly names as well. Like none of this needs to happen. Just by calling them like Hrothgar the Unwieldy doesn't suddenly put it in some mad, wonderful, fantastical world. Just call him Basil and get on with it. But, they're all trying to take whatever the MacGuffin is to the place to stop the bad guy getting the thing, and then it ends. And just because Tolkien managed to stretch that out over an interminable long period of time, and then Peter Jackson made it 3 times as long, it doesn't make it any classier or any better. So give me Sword and the Sorcerer. It's a good tight 90 minutes. There's a 3-bladed sword that fires 2 blades. None of it makes a lick of sense. But it does have the pleasing thing in it, which I absolutely love this, is that when you go through Sword and the Sorcerer, all the different names are like what I'm talking about. They're like Algar and Thrithgin and blah, 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 bblah, blah. Occasionally, though, you get like an Eric. Or like there's just like a regular name, like Percy, go do this thing. And I'm like, wait, there's Hrothgars and, Agras and Ingthins and whatever, all these different weird names. But there's also an Eric and a Percy who are just going to kind of, we're just in there with our normal names.
I love that Richard Lynch plays Cromwell, which I really could see as a BBC, elderly, not elderly, but maybe like a, in his mid-50s detective, for Scotland Yard, like BBC program, that. Yeah.
No, definitely.
You could definitely,
Well, when it came up, Richard Lynch as Cromwell, I thought he was playing like Cromwell, the reformer from the British Civil War, and I'm like, Richard Lynch is playing Cromwell. Anyway, Matt, I'm really sorry to have to cut this short, but I'm going to have to wrap this up. Huge amounts of fun, and I've loved every second of it. And thank you for bringing us your top 5 Albert Pyun films. And let's have you back on down the road, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you as well for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great, man. Thank you so much for understanding that I have to wrap it up, and thanks so much for the conversation. You take care, and we'll speak again soon, dude.
You too as well. Have a great one.
Bye now.
Well, thank you ever so much for listening to that. And now coming up, there is a song before we end the show, and this song can be found on the album We're Working on It, which is a free miscellaneous plumbing fixtures album that I'm putting up track by track throughout this quarantined situation over on SoundCloud. The link will be in the text of this episode. But basically look for miscellaneous plumbing fixtures on SoundCloud or go to miscplumfix.com. There's also a link on there. That's miscplumbfix.com. Check that out and go over there. There will be a free album which will be uploaded track by track over the next few weeks that I'm stuck at home. Stay well, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. We're all in this together.
I need a beverage, make up all the answers till there's second nature, and then start all over again. Break down in the bathroom, suck it up and ignore it. Leave all the landscapes right where you found them. Don't be part of the debris. Someone beat you to it, someone beat you down, someone made somewhere something to drown, something to drown. Someone started something that someone will never finish. Everything is soon, nothing is returned, still diminish. The return still diminish. Fight back the breathless mind full of the heartache. I've got a solution, but it'll take all the coasters and that we'll get pushed to the back. Someone took it all away, someone cares a bit, someone likes the moment to make someone fit. Just make someone fit. Someone tells you something they just can't justify. The most mature something is to let something die. We gotta let it all. Reading the footsteps, catching the mistakes, breaking the fourth wall. Commentary still irritates. I want some breakfast, but so do all the other inmates. Throw out the first few, the rest of us can compensate. The rest of us can compensate. It's all an illusion. Rate out of 5 the last decade or two, and one. Do it all with a smile. Link in the description. I'll make a poster. Jump through the circle and and that right now.